I'm about to blow your ever-loving watercolor mind. I want to make watercolor easier for you and therefore more joyful for you. So this little secret, it's really an answer to a question that I get asked the most. And when I give this answer, folks are shocked. My name is Kristy Rice. I chase joy with watercolor, and I'm here to teach you how to do the same. Now, before we get into all of it, let's talk about the palette. Yes, the palette, and also the swatching, because this is where your watercolor journey, and for that matter, where your art supply journey usually starts. You get the new palette, you swatch the new colors, but most people think they're swatching because they need to somehow memorize where these colors are in their palette so they can always go back to a favorite color they used previously in their painting. Like there's some rule that if you used Aurora Violet for your Cosmo petal 5 minutes ago, that you need to use Aurora Violet now. Now I'm a goofball and I like to use unnecessary humor to make a point. So please know, I am not yelling at you. What is this? What's it about? Not yelling at you, but I want to free you up from all of this. Now, don't get me wrong, friends. I love to swatch. I love it so much that I created this stamp set so that your swatching could be more fun. But that does not mean that swatching your new paints, your new acrylics, your new colored pencils, whatever it may be, is a means to an end of memorization. And I had to mention all this first so I could get you ready to hear the big thing that I'm about to tell you and to show you, so let's do this. I've been painting with this grouping of palettes for about 3 months right now. And the question I get asked is, how in the world do you know what you have and what's here and what you've used before? And I just want to stop you there. So as I paint this Cosmo today, you're going to be seeing me paint it twice, like at the same time. It's going to be kind of cool. I'm going to paint one way very traditionally, where I mix up the color that I'm thinking is just overall representative of this Cosmo. Now, I'm not ignoring the fact as I mix this color that there's nuance here, but overall, we've got this kind of lovely base color. That's a good round. And then we can water it down. We could brighten it up a bit, but that is a pretty good representation of the Cosmo, right? And I know that this is how many of you, especially in the beginner watercolor realm, are approaching this, finding that one true color. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I want to show you a different way. Because the answer to the question, how do you remember? How do you mix the color again? How do you? The answer is, you don't. The big aha moment I want you to have is quite simple. As you paint the petal, as you paint the hedge, the shrubbery, the whatever it might be, each time you go back to the palette, I want you to grab a slightly different color. And you might be like, Kristy, wait, that's not a red Cosmo. I know. But just trust. And in the midst of all of this grabbing a different color and wondering if it's going to end up looking like the Cosmo, you're going to be lifting like this, adding some more water like this, and doing all the things you would normally do in a painting. And friends, if you're that new here and you're like, well, I don't even know what to normally do in a painting, you're in the right place. I have a video all about that down below in the description. But every time you go back to the palette, you grab a different color. It takes away all of that nervous energy that's required of you to remember the mix, to remember the ratios that you used to create this one true color. And when we look side by side I'm going to go out on a limb, and not because I'm creating the YouTube video and trying to prove a point here and hope that you agree with me, but I'm not even going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say that the impression is very much the same, and this is more interesting. So let's consider the painting on the left to be the experiment, where I'm just grabbing a different color every time. And the painting on the right is the traditional way, where I'm mixing up the color and just using more or less paint, more or less water to control the value. There is a big caveat here I want you to be aware of because I'm human. I actually prefer the shaping of the petals on the painting on the right, the one where I'm just mixing up a good quote-unquote Cosmo color and using that one. But try not to let that fact, that difference, impact your thinking here. So quite literally on the left, every time I go to the palette, I'm going to extremes here. I'm picking up a different color. I'm picking up blues. I'm picking up reds, more like alizarin crimson. I'm picking up, I think you get the deal. And even with the greens, I was picking up different greens, more turquoise, more olive, and so on. I was pushing the envelope of this experiment because for me, it isn't an experiment on the day-to-day. It's really how I approach watercolor painting because I find it to be so much more dynamic. But my point is, I'm not usually this extreme in choosing different colors every time I go back to the palette. And then with the painting on the right, I used that original mix from the beginning of the video and just added water, added more of the color, but didn't actually change any of the colors. The reality here is that both paintings I find attractive and I feel satisfied in having created them. The painting on the left really appeals to me more in just general idea and execution because that's my style. And I love just grabbing different versions of the main color that I'm using. And as I mentioned, the painting on the right appeals to me more because I just got the shapes down better. But all in all, what I want you to understand is freedom. Freedom to, number one, not have to memorize what colors, what their names are, and the order they appear in your palette. Also that you can uphold some traditional idea of how we progress through a painting when it comes to loading our brush with color. I want to give you freedom from thinking that swatching is anything more than just playing with new art supplies. I love to swatch, but I swatch to explore. I swatch to understand. My swatching pages, however, don't become a tool for me later on to kind of track myself and keep myself in line, if you will. And number three, I want to give you that freedom to develop form, to understand expression without constraints of how should I, how could I have, did I do this right? Because the relationship that we have with our palettes and the way that we use our palettes and the way that we combine colors and the way that we mix and down the road maybe remix the same color is all very much a personal experience. And while it's good to understand the traditions from which all of this comes, it's usually not healthy to get stuck there.